Modern cities are a symbol of India's booming economy, and in this particular emerging metropolis, Gurgaon, there is plenty of wealth, opportunities and jobs. But with this unprecedented growth comes unparalleled dysfunction in the form of poor infrastructure and a lack of basic facilities. I'm Fauzia Ibrahim. On this edition of 101 East, we ask just how can Indian cities keep up with the nation's growth?
Well, I think Gurgaon is now the city of the young. Staying in Gurgaon for the young people has become a fashion. They want to have an apartment in Gurgaon.
All the offices that are there in Gurgaon, everybody's just moving there because it's not really easy to get property in Delhi.
It's more modern. It sort of is the reflection of the world outside India. Why be in Delhi? So I'd rather be in Gurgaon.
Welcome to Gen Y's shiny vision of the new India. Gurgaon's buildings look straight out of the space age, or a toy chest. Only 30 kilometres from New Delhi, the average income in this satellite city is among the highest in the country.
There is a wide cross-section of the society which is living in these sectors. And then we provide for certain infrastructural facilities such as art galleries, parks, etc. So it is to that an extent it is a dynamic city.
A new Bollywood amusement park adds pizzazz to a city that barely existed 2 decades ago. Gurgaon is a playground for the rich, growing at breakneck speed, with 8 golf courses and over 40 shopping malls. Town planner Raj Singh helped build this metropolis.
The Gurgaon experiment has been unique in India in the sense that there was active participation of private developers in the whole development process.
A lack of bureaucratic red tape and the lure of cheap land helped Gurgaon emerge. Car magnate Jagdish Khattar was among a number of corporate heads who was there from the start.
Delhi also had restrictions on industries because pollution, Delhi didn't want industries in which pollution could be there. There was a growth of industries, and once you have industries, then you have residential, then you have services. That's how it came about.
And what arrived was a carnival. Gurgaon is one of India's fastest growing cities, expanding 74% to 1.5 million people in the last decade. Urbanisation is defining the nation's future.
By the year, say, 2050, we are likely to have more than 60% of the population in the urban areas. This will lead to the emergence of a lot of new cities.
Currently, India's cities contribute 60% to its GDP. The party will continue for India's middle class and provincial governments, as smaller cities attract new growth.
India is predominantly a young country. It needs 10 million, 12 million jobs every year. All the employment to a great extent is emerging in these developing cities, and therefore I think Gurgaon has a very important role to play.
Cyber City, Gurgaon's futuristic business district, is a magnet for young workers.
General Electric was the first international company to set up shop here back in 1997. And since then, a whole wave of multinational corporations have followed suit. This is where India has bought into globalisation.
Gurgaon has become one of the world's biggest outlets for foreign companies looking to outsource office work. GENPACT provides accounting and admin services to international clients 24 hours a day. 1,000 employees work on each of their 4 floors. Such white-collar factories have created an industry worth $17 billion in export revenue. which has no problems attracting workers.
A lot of our senior management actually are people who started right at the bottom, and over the last, I would say, 12 years have really grown. I also think it is exciting because it allows people to see a worldview of multiple large global companies.
But Gurgaon has a gloomy side. Blackouts occur several times a day. When they happen, GENPACT runs backup diesel generators to power the complex. It's VIDYA SRINIVASAN's job to deliver services for workers, normally provided by the government. Buses and private taxis transport workers, while security cameras oversee the entire perimeter of the complex.
Response time sometimes is not the best from the local authorities. So we actually have our own back end, what we call the quick response teams. Should something happen, they come and immediately take charge of the situation.
Even raw sewerage is treated on company grounds.
We generate obviously a lot of domestic waste. We treat this in this plant and then we throw it into the main drains. It was a requirement of the government that came in last year. We spent $100,000 on fitting that plant, and here we are, now we're up and about with our sewage treatment plant.
I mean, so you supply sewage, electricity, security. I mean, what else do you supply as a company?
Here we have ambulances. All our offices have ambulances because we work 24/7. Emergency can happen anytime. Ambulance service of the public is not so great. So this runs 3 shifts. It's fully equipped with all the medical emergency equipment, and we're all set.
Gurgaon has no trash collection services. Rubbish is just dumped on vacant lots. The problem here is government agencies are struggling to keep up with private development.
I am a great believer that for any place to develop, the facilities should come first and the users should come later. I think in Gurgaon it's happening the other way. Gurgaon never had a unified local authority to look after it. You had private developers who had their own areas which they developed, but the connectivity between them was not there.
The city forms a patchwork of wall-gated compounds where residents fend for themselves. They need private companies to supply communal water tanks, power and security guards.
Well, what we have here is people occupying positions, places, buildings, and then realizing, oh my God, where's the parking? The private party had a plan and the government didn't. When a private party's dreams start shaping a city, you should always be very worried.
A follow-up meeting was held with Shashi.
SANJAY KAUL is part of a residential action group that meets weekly in his estate. He says such groups are vital because government agencies are slow to act and private companies don't always deliver what they promise.
In the case of Gurgaon, it has to be the private enterprise that drove it in terms of ideas and imagination, and I'd say corruption. So, you know, it's a very strange thing to say, but corruption actually becomes an instrument of growth in many ways.
Town planner Raj Singh sees problems in his very own neighbourhood. Just outside his house, infrastructure like simple drainage is far from complete.
The road is in bad shape. There is no disposal of storm water, and the solid waste disposal is also littering here and there.
But you see the results of poor citywide sewerage and drainage out on the main highway through Gurgaon. Sections of major roads are washed away from waterlogging. Their poor condition grinds traffic to a halt.
Now, in Gurgaon, last night there was only a couple of hours of light rain. But look at the water. I mean, the roads are completely flooded. And local police tell me that, in fact, on a bad day, water can get right up to your hips. And that's the problem in India. There's very little expenditure per capita on urban infrastructure. They spend about $17 US. In China, they spend about $116.
A lack of public transport doesn't help the gridlock. Sudhir Rajpal heads Gurgaon's main government agency responsible for infrastructure, which has only existed for 3 years. He says they have the funds required, but the task ahead is enormous.
We are catching up. The city has grown at a scorching pace. I think it's much easier to have an enclosed space and create a huge building. You know, in a localized area, it's much easier. It's going to take less time. But to provide the roads which lead up to that building, to provide the water pipelines. Those are not restricted to that area.
These small agencies are chasing the biggest building boom in Indian history. High-rise construction is overtaking farmland, not just on Gurgaon's outskirts, but other cities too. State governments can forcibly take land using an old colonial law for the public good, but it only helps the private sector.
Real estate developers, they are much inclined to push through their projects. And many times the elected representatives are also involved in promoting these projects. And therefore, even if you try to stop, it is just not possible.
SANJAY Sharma runs a real estate agency and a watchdog website examining development in Gurgaon. He says infrastructure will take years to reach here.
You can look around Drew over here, you can see they're right in the middle of fields. There's absolutely no roads. There won't be any sewerage over here. Right in the middle, you see all these high-rise buildings coming up. And that's the problem, because in a year or 2 years maximum, they will be ready for people to occupy.
Mr. Sharma says there's zero accountability on the part of developers. They collect huge down payments from buyers, but there's no obligation to finish building projects on time. It's a stacked system, allowing developers to continue building new projects and maintain a stranglehold over city development.
It's almost predatory behavior. Everything about the real estate industry is wrong today. The builder has completely one-sided power in a sense that if you fail to give him money in time, he can charge you 18 to 20% interest. But if he fails to give you in time, then he pays you only 1%. In many cases, he doesn't even pay you that.
What brought this city to life is now contributing to its many problems, forcing the government to think longer term.
We have a master plan ready for year 2025. We need to plan big. We need to plan at a level which we might not have thought of even earlier.
The landscape continues to change in this largely rural country. A few hours away from Gurgaon, Raj Singh is planning the rise of another modern metropolis. As new cities emerge across India, Raj Singh believes lessons have been learnt from the Gurgaon experiment.
The planned development has to be a very fast process. You cannot make a plan for 20 years and then keep quiet. In the years to come, the bureaucracy will be acting more like a managers rather than administrators dictating things over the general public, and things will improve, I'm hopeful.
Drew Ambrose with that report. For more on India's mega cities, we are now in Gurgaon, the financial and industrial centre of the state of Haryana. Joining us on the discussion panel is Professor Darshini Mahadevia from the Centre for Environmental Planning and Technology University. Naveen M. Raheja is the chairman of Raheja Developers Limited. And P.V. Indrasan is the former director of the Indian Institute of Technology. Thank you very much for joining us today. Naveen, if I could start with you, would you say that Gurgaon, the Gurgaon experiment, one where the private developers took the lead, would you say that experiment has failed?
No, not at all. If you compare Gurgaon with any other city in the country, I think you find it more vibrant, you find it more successful, you find more economic activity and growth, you find overall people, largely they are happy. And if you look at even the villages, the local old people who owned lands here, they have also become all multimillionaires, and rather even some of them maybe billionaires also.
Darshini, would you agree with this very optimistic, rosy picture of Gurgaon?
Well, you just look around you and see what Gurgaon is. It gives you how fragmented our cities have become. If you look around, you see kind of glass buildings, and you see also very poor living conditions around. If you see roads, you have good surface roads. I mean, you just have to look down from this building. You'll see good surface roads, but no footpaths for the pedestrians. So, if we define urbanization in the way that it is only economic growth, then we are in trouble, because urban settlements are also human habitats. And that's where I think focus of urbanization should be, not on making money, but on improving in quality of life of the people.
Indrasan, would you agree with that, or?
Well, you see, the poor people, they ask for more, and the rich people, they ask for something better. And so the poor countries have mega cities. You have no mega city in the West. Even London and New York are much smaller than Delhi, Bombay. So we have gone for very big cities and not bothered about the environment. We are not bothered about the quality of life. So that, I think, is a pity.
But Darshini, you know, I want to bring you back to something you said earlier on. It's a fragmented city. Surely in any city around the world, you will have this sort of a fragment. You will have those that are, who live much better than others.
Yeah, but you at least have to define something which is basic minimum livable standards. And I think that should be the goal of urbanization, on creating those possibilities of basic minimum livable standards. And that's what India is missing out on. Water supply, sanitation. If you look at the urban health and hygiene scenario, it's terribly bad. I mean, a high growth economy as India with 8 and 9% growth rate, one should be ashamed of such poor living conditions.
Naveen, how much do you think private developers should take responsibility for what's happened?
Let me first talk about negative points of megacity which are being talked about. They are not being given by the government or any of the government policies. It is only because the growth is happening so fast, and people are moving from agrarian economy to the manufacturing economy or to service industry, and they are looking at more better employment opportunities, more earning. So there is an influx. So as the influx is happening faster than we are able to cope up with the infrastructure, so we see these problems. I agree that there is lack of infrastructure. We don't have real good footpaths for the people as on today, but things will take time. This all has happened only in 10 years.
Darshini, do you think it takes time?
Talking about your question number 2.
No, I disagree with his point.
Why would you say that, though?
Because there isn't so much of influx to city as is being said about. For last 20 years, if you look at the metropolitan cities and their growth rates, except Delhi, every other city, people have moved out of the metropolitan city, rather they have come in. If you look at the urbanization rate of India, it has been only 2.82% in 2001 to 2011. In the previous decade, it was 2.75%. When our growth has picked up in India, with all the kind of growth stories that you hear around in Gurgaon, people have stopped coming to cities. And that's completely a paradox, unexpected paradox that we see in India, that big cities and urban settlements have become hostile to the migrants, and migrants have not been coming to the cities. It's because of our bad priorities, or rather wrong priorities, and bad governance.
Bad governance, is that the case here?
Well, see, when there's a normal distribution, top half of the population will have 50% of the income. Bottom half of the population will have 20% of the income. In proportion to that, you must have housing also. If Mr. Raheja had been told that he must set apart 20% of the space, of housing space, for the poor people, there would be no slums. Unfortunately, we have no such law.
Surely those slums need to be improved in order to catch up with this sort of growth that we're seeing in the background here.
They need to be improved, and they absolutely do. They need to be improved. And the government has already introduced a lot of policies for slum redevelopment, in situ redevelopment. So a lot of policies have already taken place, and in Delhi, my company is going to do the slum redevelopment. We have been awarded contracts under private-public partnership, and we are going to take all those people, put all those people into multi-storied housing, blocks, which used to be slums like this.
Excuse me. Poor people should never be in a multi-story block.
Why is that?
I tell you why. You have a corridor. The corridors are not well lit because it's a poor people's house. So people are afraid. So they close the doors. Whereas in a slum, they are always outside. There is security in a slum. but not in any of these multi-story buildings. They have been pulled down in London, in Paris, in United States and so on. So if you want to have a multi-story building, it has to be open on one side. But if you have got tenements on both sides, it is a disaster. I am telling Mr. Vaidya.
I only want to know then where is the land?
No, I would rather like you to ask a question. Why slums are coming up?
Well, let's address that question.
I think
Why
that
are the
rather
slums
than
coming
saying
up?
there is so much of land speculation today in India, and as a part of our growth story itself, that has led to creation of land prices rising up and even middle class population getting priced out. Otherwise, what explains why about 70% of population in Bombay lives in slum, which is one of the richest city of India?
Perhaps it's time for us to admit that mega cities are a failure. Is that the case? Is there a model in this world right now, currently, where a mega city actually works?
Nowhere does a mega city work, because mega cities, they reduce the purchasing power of money. It is much more expensive than to live in a small town. They reduce social togetherness. That is the problem.
If that's the case, what do you think?
That is true. That is true. Solutions? Well, we can discuss about solutions.
What is the solution?
Solutions are to create more growth centers and economic hubs. So the solution is
you invest in small and medium towns.
Small, compact economic centers where there is employment, where there is housing available for you, where there is other infrastructure, whether it is hospitals, schools, entertainment, whatever. So they are complete balanced, and then we are able to create these cities with complete responsibility of global warming and environment control.
That's a good point. Why isn't this happening now then?
It is because India's growth rate, the Indian economic growth is not based on manufacturing, which can be decentralized. It is more a service-driven growth, which is concentrated in the larger cities. India has unable to transit to a big manufacturing economy in spite of its wishes.
No,
once again, there is a land question. Land is becoming extremely expensive on all accounts. I think if you look at the entire scams after scams which have come up in India, they are all concentrated around land, and the agitations in the country are also concentrated around land because land has become a speculative thing.
I slightly differ from her. The problem is our politicians look at the poor as vote banks. They want them to remain poor, so keep them poor. If you had given them reasonable amount of land, there will have been no slums, and also they don't give them proper schools or hospitals. The private industry is not willing to do it because they don't make any profit out of this, so the poor are completely left out.
I am going to make 2,800 houses for the poor in Delhi and I have started the work. So it is not that. It is just having a will, and I disagree that political system does not want, they want to keep them poor. Nobody can keep anybody poor.
What do you think then private developers, private companies, as well as the state needs to keep in mind moving forward when they develop these cities?
If the government were to say that every private developer should set apart 20% of the space for the poor and give them housing which is subsidized by the top 50% of the population who have got 80% of the space, then you will find that the cities will be much better than what they are at the present time.
But this is happening already.
It is not happening.
15% in Gurgaon, 15% apartments are to be made for EWS. That is economically weaker sections, that is part of the master plan. Okay, you want 20%, maybe that will also happen. But that is not the solution. Solution because there are so many people. So creating, I do agree, there have to be innovative methods to accommodate people, and the innovative methods can be that you set the FAR and population density norms free for certain areas which are close to the industrial hubs, which are close to the work centers, so that people can be, as many people can be accommodated as is required even for the lower strata of the society.
Right. No, I think make lands, affordable lands available in all parts of the city for the urban poor to build their own housing, because this supply driven, private sector driven housing is not going to be enough.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave the discussion there. Thank you so much for your time. And that's all the time we have for this edition of 101 East. You can always follow the program through our website, Facebook, podcast and Twitter. From all the team here in Gurgaon, India, thank you for watching.